are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart in Ireland's own Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. It felt very weird, Blake, that we were off this long, and you got to witness the national championship in person. I got to get my nice little vacation in and leave the country for a week, but it didn't feel as worth it, I would say, because we didn't get to do the show.
I would have been an outright asshole if they would have won and we would have come in here on Sunday. I'm glad I got a day to decompress.
I'm glad you did too. And I'm glad you made it back with the chaotic travel arrangements that you had going on.
Well, look, I know that I did not get to do a lot of LSU like live shows like we normally do, but it was well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be one of the best experiences that I've ever had, to be honest with you. To witness what I witnessed, the complete game shutout from Cade Anderson, winning a national title, Jay Johnson winning 2 titles in the last 3 years. I mean, when people do say that LSU is the mecca of college baseball, they are not lying. It is the mecca of college baseball. But I got to admit something. I couldn't believe it because I can kind of believe it, but as soon as it's over, now I'm kind of like, all right, I guess on to football now.
I know it seems so abrupt. It seems so quick. The way that the page is turned. You were texting me very excitedly earlier that like you're ready to go full focus in football. And I'm very excited as well. I obviously only focus on football all year round. I don't have any other sports that distract me. So now that you and I are locked in, we're in July, which is a little slow for some people. Won't be slow for us. But as soon as July ends, we're ramped up.
I mean, really and truthfully, when midweek through July hits and SEC Media Days are here, it really starts ramping up, if we're being honest. So, we got about a couple of weeks here, and then SEC Media Days will kick off. I will not be going to SEC Media Days or Big Ten Media Days or any of that. I'm stationed here. But, yeah, it's right around the corner, and a lot of storylines that we could get to. And, you know, I thought it was very funny because Thomas Castellanos had some very undesirable words about the University of Alabama that we'll get to tonight.
I'll save my thoughts for that, but I don't think I've ever seen so much S-talking by a guy that has not done really anything. He hasn't accomplished anything, and he's talking like he was a Heisman contender last year. I was blown away, flabbergasted, if you will, by the comments that he had, and I'll save my reaction for later when we get to that. But of all players, if Carson Beck made those comments, Blake, and maybe he made him about made him about Notre Dame or something like that, and maybe it was something different, but he maybe say he made those about Notre Dame, I'd understand it because he's been on national championship teams. He's been on SEC championship winning teams. He has at one point been in the Heisman buzz. He's been in the first round buzz. He's played a lot of football. Thomas Castellanos was statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in the ACC, and he said that he's dominated that conference, which is effing sane.
I understand what he was trying to say based off of his 2023 season.
Sure.
Versus last year. Now, we'll talk about it, but I don't – shame on Florida State's PR team for allowing that to be run.
Shame on – I'm not shame on Nakos, but – because he handed him a gold mine of content for June. So great for him for getting that scoop that it's not really a scoop, but the storyline that he got. They've been posting different quotes like 3-4 times over the last 2 days. But yeah, I think you're right. I'm surprised that nobody stepped in. Nobody tried to. I don't even know how it was arranged. It was behind a paywall, so I didn't get to read the entire thing. But I don't even know how that got set up. You're right. Florida State should have stepped in. They should not have let that happen.
Without a doubt. And it wasn't the only hot topic situation that we'll talk about tonight is Wisconsin versus Miami in a lawsuit for Mr. Lucas. We'll talk about that as well. Pac-12 does get a TV right deal with CBS. We'll mention that. But, Joe, as we start out, and what also will be here in a couple weeks, and what will really get people fired up for college football, is that EA Sports came out with their top 25 list of toughest places to play. Now, we'll probably talk about the top 10 here. But Joe, was there anything on the EA Sports that stood out to you? But I can read off the top 10 here. So EA Sports top 10 toughest places to play in the video game. LSU at number 1, Penn State 2, Ohio State 3, Sanford Stadium at Georgia number 4, Bryant-Denny number 5, Memorial Stadium at Clemson number 6, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, Florida at 7, Gaylord at Oklahoma at 8, Outson at Oregon at 9, and then Michigan Stadium at 10. Anything stand out to you?
I feel like that they, like, for the most part, last game they got a lot of these right. I feel like we're off to like a really rocky start. Texas not getting in the top 10 of this list was pretty surprising.
Who would you take out and put Texas in for? Because if you take somebody out, you got to put.
I'd probably take Oklahoma. I would bump Texas in because, for context, Texas is 90-34 at home, and they have an average margin of victory of 11.7.
What was that 90-34 span in?
I believe the lifetime of the stadium. I got this off of a betting platform that had a measurement of the teams that have the best home field advantage, and most of these records are pretty long, so I would assume it's the lifespan of the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want recency bias. I mean, look, they've had some years. I don't think that going to Austin's an easy place to play. I don't know. I don't know if it's as rowdy when Oklahoma's rocking that it's a tougher environment to play in. Like, tougher to play. Because if we're being honest, then what's Oklahoma? Because while Texas
top 15.
Well, when Texas was down for a decade, no one went into Oklahoma in the Big 12 and won. No one.
It's true.
I mean, Bama went in there and couldn't win. I mean, I be honest with you, Texas was not the one that I was surprised that wasn't in there. It was A&M that I was surprised that wasn't in there.
Oh my God, I completely forgot that Kyle Field didn't make it in there.
Yeah, dude. I mean, listen, I make fun of A&M all the live long day. But I mean, Joe, going into there at night, I mean, they got 100,000+ of just screaming crazy ass fans that do some weird shit. But it doesn't matter if we think that they're weird; they're loud. So like it's not an easy place to play. I do think records do come into play in this, but I also think that Kyle Field is just one of the toughest environments to go in the country.
You know what I just realized? This actually should be the most glaring that neither of us just brought up. Where's Tennessee? Where is Tennessee on this list? It is so loud at Tennessee. Whenever I watch, and I was watching Joshua Joseph's tape because I'm doing prep for the 2026 draft. It gets so loud in that stadium. It's the only stadium that when I'm watching tape that the camera's shaking. It gets that loud that you literally can't see what's happening on the field because it is shaking from all the way up top when they're trying to film the all-22 Fields view for film. I feel like that has to be in the top 10. I don't know necessarily who I would completely take out. I probably would take out Oklahoma for Tennessee.
I got to tell you one that I'd put down, not because they lose there, but because they just haven't in recent years had the big plus size games. Now they'll have one this year because Texas comes to town. Sanford Stadium.
That was for me.
But here's the thing. I'm not saying that Sanford Stadium shouldn't be in the top 10. They don't deserve to be in the top 5. I am sorry. Like when you go to some of these other places, whether it be Penn State, whether it be Ohio State, LSU, whether it be Bryant-Denny. I mean, Joe, teams don't really go into Bryant-Denny and win either. Now, people will say, oh, well, what happened last year? But the problem is they knocked off the SEC champion at home last year. Their losses came on the road. I mean, they lost to Vanderbilt on the road. They lost to Oklahoma on the road. So they're still not losing at home. I don't know if I put Sanford Stadium in the top 5. I'm not saying not top 10, but how can we look at Alton in Oregon and not put them there over Georgia? Listen, that can easily change because Texas is coming into town, and that place could be absolutely rocking. But at the same, and by the way, Bama comes to town. So I mean, I understand that, but man, there just comes a point in time where like there are some teams that had some prolific games at home that they're memorable.
I had made a note that I would have put Ben Hill over them at Florida Stadium.
No
93-25 record, 15.79 average margin of victory in that span. They had one of the best margin of victory averages out of any of the teams on the source that I pulled for measuring home field advantage. I feel like the bigger indicator for me, Blake, that I think of is, when a team's not doing great and they've had down years, do they still pull out unexpected upsets? And that's been Florida. That was Florida this past year. They upset a bunch of teams that nobody expected them to.
Yeah, like Ole Miss.
And LSU.
And LSU. Right. I mean, there comes a point in time, too, where I look at them and say, but the problem that people will have with Brendan Hill-Griffin, it's like what they have the problem when you go down to Auburn, is Miami went in there in week 1 and blew them out.
Yeah, but we going to change that completely because of one game? I don't know if I love that.
Listen, when Ben Hill-Griffin Stadium is rocking, and I mean this, it can rival – I don't know if I don't put it at 2. The 2 loudest environments I've ever been in, me personally. Now, we can go to Penn State, and we could definitely change our mind. I've never been to Ohio State. I can certainly change my mind. The 2 loudest environments I've ever been in my life, Ben Hill-Griffin Stadium and LSU. And the whole culture with LSU, I mean, let's not – look, I'm not going to go there with anybody, but just experience Death Valley Saturday night. I mean, it's a different vibe and culture and a whole different deal. The problem that I have, Joe, is I don't know if I don't put Brent Hill-Griffin Stadium at 2 when they're right. I mean, that is the most chaotic. By the way that their walls are structured, it's so high and it's just everything is encapsulated. I mean, look, I'm glad they're in the top 10. I would have put them in my top 5 personally.
I feel like at the end of the year, like that's going to be the one stadium that's probably going to rise. So for the 27 version of the video game, it'll probably end up being top 5. Because, I mean, we've already talked about this. We did our Florida preview. We talked about how we think the Florida is going to have a huge season this upcoming year, that they're going to completely take a big step forward. So they're going to be able to prove themselves a lot more. I will say this, though, seeing all these deep dives, it wasn't the same degree of exciting as it was last year when EA was announcing all this stuff, because like it was the first time we were getting the game in 10 years. I'm juiced up, though. This thing's coming out in 2 weeks. We're getting it earlier than we did last year.
Are we really?
The 7th. If you pre-order it and you have EA Play, you can get it. Also, we didn't talk about this. You have a PlayStation, and we can now play cross console on Dynasty.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
do that now.
The last time we played last summer, what happened?
Okay, that was the first time either of us touched the game. I've got everything figured out now. Everything figured out now.
But see, here's the problem with that. That's how you show who is the better gamer is. Because you found glitches in the game, and I found glitches in the game.
No, I didn't find glitches. I learned the problem was I didn't have a playbook. You need to have your playbook. I didn't.
What playbook do you run, by the way?
I use the Jed Fish's playbook. It's like a more pro style kind of spread. It's a lot of it's not like the Wake Forest heavy mesh where it's a lot of mesh, but a lot of mesh concepts, a lot of crossing routes, a lot of running the football. That's typically what I go with.
I go Louisville. Same kind of concept, because I feel as if that like I'm a pro style guy myself. Like I like going from the power eye. I will spider two wide banana your ass all the live long day, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Especially if I have an athletic quarterback, you're in trouble.
If you figure out how to run the ball in that game, you're going to kick everybody's ass, and that's ultimately how he set everything up.
Dude, when I did play a couple of people online, I literally ran outside zone the entire time.
No one knows how to stop it.
No one knows how to stop it. But look, I'm glad the game's back. I do feel like that it really – Joe, we have a long off season in this sport, man, and it comes with a lot of negatives. a lot of times. There's no real positives a lot of times over the last 3 to 4 years when it comes to college football in the offseason. There's a lot of realignment. There's a lot of NIL talk. There's the house case, and there's so much things to digress. And it's like you're drinking through a fire hose. This, I feel like for me growing up, and I know you growing up, was a big time for everybody to be like, all right, the season's here. And really and truthfully, for the general public with that play it, they get to learn rosters that they don't know about because they can play with other teams. I mean, I remember like, man, that dude number 15 at Florida is going to be really good. Well, the dude's name was Tim Tebow. And he was unstoppable. Like, I didn't know who
just based off of a video game. We're able to figure that out. Just based off of a video.
Hey, this number 1 guy named Percy Harvin doesn't suck. Right. You know? So, and then you could download the roster names, and that way you always had it. But look, it's going to be fun. It looks like it's really fun. By the way, before we change topics here, what do you think about these coaches being in the game?
I think that conceptually it makes a lot of sense because coaches now want to – we talked about this not that long ago. It's a recruiting tool that now these kids play with a team, and they're like, oh, cool, like Coach Kiffin's actually texting me and he's talking to me, and I'm actually playing with Ole Miss or against Ole Miss. I don't think any of the coaches look anywhere near close to what they look like in real life. They had Marcus Freeman in a damn sweater vest. Marcus Freeman doesn't wear a damn sweater vest. He's the most well-dressed coach in college football, and they did him so dirty.
He does wear shirts a little too small, though. But can we
admit that? He could get away with it.
Fair. Just wear an extra large instead of a large.
No.
All I'm saying.
No.
Okay. All right. So I see somebody saying South Carolina is louder. I mean, South Carolina can get loud. The problem is
I've never been, so I can't fight against that.
Yeah, I mean, it's loud. I mean, the problem is that a lot of these teams that, like, look, brother, you just had your first 9-win season in a hot minute. Since Steve Spurrier, who went off on Texas today, by the way. I mean, you got to have some success here, too. Toughest places to play, not loudest places to play.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, Joe, let's get to a quick break. When we come back, we talk about this Thomas Castellanos mess and him firing after Alabama. But before we do that, everybody do us a favor, hit the like and share to all those groups if you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, let's take a quick break. When we come back, Tommy Castellanos going after Alabama. We talk about it next day. By the way, walkout songs. You have any thoughts about NCAA banning walkout songs, even if it's a Kanye West song?
I'm not caught up on this. Sadly, I can't try. I saw some discourse on it, and I saw you chiming in on it. I don't have enough.
Hey, but to
go off of
men and women swimming. That's definitely allowed. You know who else put their foot in their mouth this week?
Who's that?
Thomas Castellanos, the quarterback at Florida State, the new quarterback at Florida State, who's coming in from Boston College. A lot of people remember, Joe, the Bill O'Brien first year in Boston College. Tommy Castellanos gets benched. Came out in a statement with On 3 and Pete Nakos and said, and we're just paraphrasing, or I'm going to paraphrase two statements that he had, says that they don't have Nick Saban to save them now. I just can't see them stopping me. Joe, I guess, what are your thoughts about this Castellanos situation and him going after Alabama?
He needs to be a lot more humble. I mean, what he's spouting off, and I said this in the open. He's spouting off as if he was a Heisman contender last year on a national championship competing team. Like he already beat Alabama in his career. He hasn't accomplished any of that. One of his other later quotes in Nakos' article was that he tore the ACC up my damn self for the last 2 years. He had a good 2023 season. He was a quality player for Boston College. He actually played better than he did he played better as a passer in 2024 than he did in 2023. Bill O'Brien was able to unlock a little bit more from him. But after he was benched, the sitting starter was a much better player than him. And Castellanos was ranked last in the ACC in QBR at 38.3. I think that there's a world where he ends up being a great player for Florida State. We already talked about how he's a great fit for for Gus Malzahn's offense. I forgot that he originally was actually at UCF before he transferred to Boston College. So he was recruited by Malzahn.
That's
Malzahn
right.
clearly likes him as a young man and trusts him. There's something to be tapped into there. But dude, you can't be making comments like this when you have so much to prove playing for a team that is fighting to stay alive and relevant. Norvell is fighting for his job. He referenced that in the quotes that he gave to Pete Nakos. For the love of God, man, don't say dumb shit like this.
Well, not only that, I think that if this were a situation where Florida State was coming out of the season like they did in 2023, and they come into the season, all right, hey, they're 13-1 on the season. They had an incredible year. They went through the portal. I mean, you got to give them credit where credit's due. Does Mike Norvell really have this thing rolling? I think that might have been one thing. Sure. Florida State won 2 games. 2 games. Now, before I get to the comments, I do want to mention this about Castellanos. I didn't like the way that Bill O'Brien tried to use him. I don't like that he was trying to eliminate him improvising and running the football. Joe, in the ACC, for what it's worth, in 2023, he did run for 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns. And you eliminating him for arguably his biggest strength, which is getting yards on the ground and improvising. And I feel like Bill O'Brien benching Castellanos because he's not the fit for the quarterback of what the offense that he wants to run. Like, I don't think Castellanos is a bad quarterback at all. I think he can move. He's got to get better as a thrower. I mean, Joe, you and I talk about this all the time. You can't sit at 60% completion percentage and be that erratic as a passer and think that you're going to win games. Problem is that the dude is very electric, and he can really hurt you with his legs. All of that being said, you're going up against a team in Alabama, regardless of what happened to them last season or not, them going 9-3, regardless, they have been the pinnacle of the sport the last 2 decades. They have a new head coach, and I understand it. You should not give that team bulletin board material. No. I mean, Nick Saban would eat that up. Now let's see if Kalen DeBoer can do it. The problem that I have in this more than anything, and you talked about humility, you got benched. Like, you legitimately
and he bailed.
And he bailed on his bailed. Correct. He bailed on his teammates when he didn't get his way. Now, I will say this. Rightfully so. I'm not saying Bama fans shouldn't have been mad at this. Y'all said Bill O'Brien sucked when me and you were defending him, Joe, literally a year ago on this show, saying he was horrible with developing quarterbacks. Well, he had a quarterback that was a Heisman Trophy winner. So I don't know about that. I think it's funny that they're saying that, well, Bill, you couldn't even work with Bill O'Brien, but they didn't even want Bill O'Brien to call plays for them. So now they're like sticking up for him, which I think is a little bit weird in a way. Look, sometimes you got to learn when to not say stuff and not be in the public eye and do what's right for the team. You have no right to talk. 0 right to talk. You got benched. Your team went 2-10, the team that you're going into, and you're not humble. By the way, Nick Saban saving them. Nick Saban wasn't on the field tackling anybody. He recruited elite dudes. There's still some really damn good players defensively for Alabama. And, Joe, I don't know if they don't get absolutely abused by Alabama in week 1.
Well, we already talked about that. That was the whole point. And actually, thank you to Thomas, by the way, because the video that we already have, the preview that we did for week 1, the very early preview, gave us a nice little recharge of viewership on that video. People came filing into the comments to chime in on it. So thank you, Thomas, for that. But we already spoke on how we don't have a lot of faith for Florida State to come out swinging in that game. And we did our preview and we said, look, Florida State can be competitive. And we actually spoke very highly of Castellanos. We said that, hey, this is a redeemable opportunity for both sides. Fits perfectly with Malzahn. First game is going to be rough, but the rest of the year, you're going to be able to get into a rhythm and some momentum, and you can win 7, maybe 8 ball games if things go really, really well. But to already put such a huge red target on your head and your team is not how you want to start the year, especially when there's already a target on your head coach. I'm just perplexed how this even happens and how this is the mentality of a guy who, again, got benched, was somebody who bailed on his team, entered the transfer portal, and was afforded a tremendous opportunity to be a part of possibly the resurrection of Florida State, and then to already drag them down with such a distraction. At the end of the day, and if anyone wants to get in their feelings about this, anyone who's played the sport knows that coaches take becoming a distraction very, very seriously. Do not become a distraction. Having distractions tears a locker room apart. I'm not saying that this is enough to do that, but I'm telling you right now, during summer workouts and during fall camp, it will be something that gets brought up. And if he goes to media days, it absolutely will get brought up as well.
I'm not trying to change the subject here, but stay with me.
Okay.
What is up with these quarterbacks like Castellanos and Diego Pavia going on with busting with the boys?
Pavia pissed me off a lot. I feel like he's kind of going on like a celebrity tour after he had like one decent season. But you're right.
But here's the thing for me, and I'm not trying to steer the conversation away from Castellanos, but even Diego Pavia, I do feel like, to your point, there's a little bit of an enrichment here, like, oh, look at me, and not understanding the moment that you're in. Like, they don't understand it. And I got to be honest. Look, Joe, now that the summer's officially here and baseball is over, NBA Finals is over, and we're in a sporting dead period. I mean, I love Major League Baseball, so it's not really a dead period for me. For all you sickos who don't watch sports during the summer, you're completely missing out on a lot of great stuff. Regardless of that, Diego Pavia is saying that we're going to run the state of Tennessee after next year, and then I'm seeing people come out here.
They lost to Tennessee.
Well, they're coming out with their top 10. Exactly. They're coming out with their top 10 quarterbacks in the SEC list, and I'm seeing people that I respect having Pavia at 3 in the SEC. Are you nuts? Joe, he failed at the end of the year. He came into Baton Rouge.
Lost to Georgia State. They lost to Georgia State last year.
They did, but after losing to Georgia State, they did beat Bama, and then they almost beat Texas and lost by a field goal. The problem is, I think that his rise came because we never expected for Vanderbilt to go sub 500. Brother, you're sub 500. Same with Castellanos. Brother, the team that you're on went 2-10. And to the Pavia doesn't have to deal with this as much because he's in the same system for the 4th year now. So it's a lot different. The problem that I do have, though, is I look at Tommy Castellanos. Brother, do you understand? You have brand new teammates that you have no idea how things work. You probably don't have a great connection with them yet. I'm not saying that you can't, but yet I don't think that you do. And Joe, you get to a place where how many problems will you have in week 1 versus that defense? Like, when you do something like that, whether it be Diego Pavia and whether it be Tommy Castellanos, they are the face of those comments. The truth is that you're putting words in situations on your teammates' backs, and you're throwing them under the bus when you do that.
Yes.
You're throwing them under the bus. And I know that NIL has played a factor in here. God only knows how much Bussin' with the Boys paid Diego Pavia or On3 paid Castellanos to do this interview. God only knows with the new NIL situations and God only knows. But regardless, you went sub 500 at Vanderbilt and Florida State went 2-10. Put your head down and get to work. I feel like, Joe, last thing for me, I feel as if that I'm the old man sitting on the porch drinking sweet tea that's like, get off my lawn, and telling kids not to express themselves as we come on a podcast and make a living of expressing ourselves. But we also don't come out here and are so non-humble to the fact, and I understand they're kids, but the problem is, Joe, think about this. With TV revenue money, those guys are multi-million-dollar quarterbacks that are out here saying crazy shit.
Well, and I think there's a big difference here, though, between the two things. We're we're not speaking on ourselves. We come on this show and we project and analyze teams across the country because we've garnered the audience that wants to hear our opinions, talk about the athletes, the coaches, the teams, the traditions, all of those things. Quotes from Pavia, quotes from Castellanos. They are very egotistically and confidently pushing up themselves, and they're pushing up their teammates, but in a negative way. They're not speaking with the confidence of uplifting their teammates. They're speaking with almost blind confidence that is going to put a negative target on their back if things go awry. Again, it becomes a distraction. The equivalent for us would be if we came on here and every single day we started taking shots saying, like, if we came on here and said, like, oh, Kirk Herbstreit doesn't know shit compared to us. We're better than Kirk Herbstreit. He's not the same guy that he once was. We're way better show than anything that Kirk Herbstreit can put out. We're not saying that. We've never said anything like that. We've certainly criticized and questioned some people's opinions, but we've never shot down the credentials of well-established legacy and then try to make it seem like we were the greatest thing out there. No, we're humble of understanding of the growth that goes into this. And Castellanos and Pavia's a step further and past him, but it's all a process. You haven't done anything. Beating Alabama was a great moment. It was. But your team was still mediocre. You still lost to Georgia State. You need to understand that there's a lot more left to be accomplished for speaking so confidently the way that they were.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a bad look if I said this is going to be the last thing, but I'm just going to throw this out there. Shame on Florida State PR team for allowing this to happen. I mean, you got to. I mean, I don't know if they just didn't know, and then NACOS ran it, and then you can't really go with it a retraction, But they can. What can they say now? Look, there is. I will give him this. The only thing that I really liked about the Castellanos situation was a kid got benched, and I'm glad that he's got that much faith in himself. But it's like the Conor McGregor situation all over again. And the analogy that we used. Everybody loved Conor McGregor when he said he was going to beat the shit out of somebody in round one, and he went in there and did it. But then when he started getting his ass whooped, nobody liked him anymore. He was just a drunken Irish asshole, right? Like that's how people just viewed it. I mean, it's just the truth. So what are you going to be? Now, you better get to work and you better go off. I do wonder how Gus attacks that defense, though. I do think it's still going to be a very interesting game. And, well, you get tuned into it a little bit more.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if there are opportunities to run up that score. I would say don't be surprised.
I would not think that they would not do that. That is for damn sure. All right, Joe, let's move on here. So there was a lawsuit filed. Wisconsin versus Miami is what we titled it. But there was a lawsuit filed revolving around former DB Xavier Lucas, who transferred to the University of Miami after signing a 2-year TV revenue deal, the highest at the time when it was signed, a TV revenue deal with Xavier Lucas to stay at the University of Wisconsin. But now Wisconsin has sued over tampering and tortious interference of the 2-year deal for Lucas, who, by the way, was not named in the lawsuit. He was labeled as Player A in the lawsuit. Lucas's name not being mentioned, though, did not stop Wisconsin for tampering and trying to regain money for the TV revenue money that they already had given him. Now, it should be noted that it was also reported at the time of the transfer that Yahoo Sports did post and did run a story about Xavier Lucas saying, or him not saying, but his main reason for transferring, per sources of Yahoo Sports, which those guys very well, that it was a family illness issue, which really came down to. So, Joe, Wisconsin versus Miami, not on the field, but a lawsuit of NIL. Your thoughts?
Just an added detail here. Xavier Lucas in Miami kind of set a precedent and tried to skirt the transfer portal. And the way that they tried to do this was him unenrolling at Wisconsin and enrolling at Miami, despite signing a 2-year. This is something that we've talked a lot about in the new world of college athletics, despite signing a 2-year revenue sharing agreement that was binding. This wasn't a loose contract. This was a binding deal that he was earning revenue from the University of Wisconsin, that he had to stay there. And they tried to go around that. They tried to go around just the general concept of the transfer portal because they argued that they violated NCAA rules. His lawyer argued that they violated NCAA rules by not putting his name into the portal within 48 hours. They argued that they are required to do that. I am glad that Wisconsin is filing a lawsuit. And I think that once the College Sports Commission becomes a thing, that tampering in instances like this are going to be really focused on. I really think that that is going to be the biggest issue. I think it's going to be a lot less to do with impacting how NIL affects high school recruiting. I think that there's going to be a little bit of a learning process. They are out to fix this tampering problem. And I think that this is well-timed deliberately, that they moved silently for months, to the point where Ross referenced in his article, and I also, or not Ross, the CBS Sports article that I read, referenced the fact that it was almost like nothing was going to happen, that they just, in a way, gave up. They were moving so silently. This comes after the House case announcement and then the inception of the College Sports Commission, which is supposed to police this stuff. I think that this lawsuit, in good and bad ways, and I'll get to the bad ways after you chime in. The good way being,
go ahead and get to him.
Yeah. The good way being that if Wisconsin wins this and some sort of financial value is determined to be awarded to Miami, that is now the new precedent for if a player chooses to leave before his contract is up. That creates the precedent of what is a buyout. What does that look like? You know, we need these things in order for that tampering issue to be fixed, in order to prevent tampering from happening. And then the inverse for the schools that lose their players to get something in return. But the big problem here, Blake, on the other side, is that if they rule in favor of Miami and say, like, well, you know what, Wisconsin had to, put his name in the portal, so they're not owed anything. If they rule in favor of him, that automatically makes all of these revenue sharing agreements unenforceable. All of them. It makes all of them unenforceable. That means kids can just sign these contracts, do whatever the hell they want. And that would just completely wreck all of the progress that we had. That's the one thing that I get afraid of.
I don't know if it will. Let me tell you why I don't think it will. Because this happened before the House settlement case was determined and before the commission was there. So the commission cannot get their hands involved in this, the way that I understand it.
Yeah.
Because this happened before. This is now going to be it's got to be a civil suit of when the action happened before the House settlement case took place. I understand what you're saying, but I do think that there's going to have to be a situation where that this kind of situation is going to have to happen after Xavier Lucas, if that makes sense. Because you can't bring up the House settlement case. You can't bring up the College Football Commission because of the simple or College Sports Commission. You can't bring them into the fold here because the actions happened before this was even invented. I understand what you're saying and agree. I think that that's happening later on, though. Is there going to be another lawsuit of this type of thing happening? Joe, I don't know, or for me, the way that I see it, and we're not attorneys, we're not in civil law, whatever, I have no idea how this is going to transpire. Joe, my only thing is what if he can prove that his father had an illness?
I hate this is going to come off as crass, but I kind of think that it has a lot less to it's an important piece, right? Like he's trying to prove that, like, hey, this was something that, was an issue. It was referenced in the CBS Sports article that apparently the day that or right around the time that he entered his name, I think it was the day of, he was texting with a position coach about changing his number at Wisconsin. So it kind of is like, well, how does that suddenly come up? Nobody knew about this until.
Let me tell you how that suddenly happens. You're talking to your position coach. Your dad has a heart attack and he can't go to work, and your mom doesn't work either. I mean, like,
fair point.
There's a lot of ways that could be sliced, but they're all.
Yes.
It feels too good to be true, right? Like it feels too good to be. Here would be my question. I'm sure Miami's paying them a little bit more. I'm not saying that they're not. Okay. It's not as if Wisconsin was giving him chump change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Would he really want to leave for something like, I don't want to say something smaller. I don't think they broke the bank for this kid. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I think what's going to have to come of this in all actuality is his dad ill? Is his father ill? And if they can prove that, Joe, based off of the portal, I mean, listen, I do think that he's going to have to pay some kind of pay some money back.
I don't think he will, because again, Lucas isn't technically in the lawsuit. I think that Miami's going to be responsible for paying. So, but this was my point about when you just asked about his dad's illness. I'm not saying this to say that it's meaningless in the conversation, and it's very meaningful in his life. And I hope that there's nothing wrong with his dad, and I hope that he's able to recover. That might not be the case. You know, I've dealt with parental health issues before in my own life, and it's awful. But the thing is like, I don't know if it necessarily, in the context of this specific lawsuit, that it can really, it applies as much, because the whole argument is that Miami tampered, that Miami met with him when they were not supposed to at his home, that ramped this up and sped this up, and that caused him to
let me bring up another. Look, I'm not trying to take Miami's side here, or player's side.
I'm not taking anyone's side necessarily. Yeah. I'm anti-tampering in this situation.
So just in case this is the first time someone has ever watched Ruffino and Joe show, we have had exclusive debates about how much I hate tampering.
Yep, we both
just have. So that correct. So just so that I'm on record here, there is another problem that I have here in reference to this too. Hey, and you brought this up. You didn't put him in the portal, though. How long is he supposed to wait? So you violated the own rule that you obliged that you were going to do anyway. I mean, Joe, we remember covering I don't remember how long by days it happened. It damn sure took him more than 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so again, look, I don't think that this is going to be like the Nico Iamaleava situation where this kind of is earth-shattering. I just feel like there's going to be a settlement here to some extent, and where I don't know of another world where it's not. I think that in today's world, with the House settlement case and with the College Sports Commission, that you're now in a place where when this happens again, because it's going to happen again, that you are going to have to do it. Now, something that we could kind of add into this, Joe, buyouts were approved by everybody. Buyouts are a thing now. So, I mean, if you transfer, and per Pete Nakos and Ross Dellinger, buyouts have already been somewhat happening of kids signing contracts and then schools giving money to buy them out so that they can be in the portal and nobody say anything. I just think that here's what I wish would happen. If anybody does get involved, let's say the College Sports Commission does get involved here, mediate, say, hey, what does everybody want? Let's squash it and have a new day for college football. Because this is the kind of shit in the offseason that turns people away. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to talk about this. So what? Okay, so what? And I got to be honest. I wouldn't want to be in Wisconsin either. I wouldn't. And so I get it. People are not going to agree or think I'm defending the kid. I think both sides are at fault in some instances. But you did sign a contract. They did pay you money, and then you left. And they're trying to recoup that. But, Joe, this is not the only one. The Madden Iamaleava situation with Arkansas. They're trying to get a reconciliation on their money.
Well, but he actually followed the guidelines of leaving on the correct timeline. Well,
let me ask
you. There obviously clearly was tampering in that situation, because you tell me that when Nico was moving to UCLA that there wasn't a a quick conversation of like,
well, we know
does Madden want to come too? Why don't they telling his dad, why don't you call Madden and see if he wants to come play?
We know that there was. But let me ask you this. There's also a violation of you not allowing him in the portal.
I think that's all kind of like nonsense at this point. I'm just really hung up on the contract. You signed a contract. You signed a 2-year contract with no out. That is on you. If you had representation, you have a lawyer that you have been going to. You should have understood and knew the stipulations that you can't predict and understand and know when you're going to have a family health issue. That, like, I don't put on him. And again, you mentioned I'd be in the same shoes. Like, I'd want to be close to home if I possibly could be. But I think that if you sign a deal, you have to understand what comes with that. You can't just back out. And the thing that does suck is that there was no flexibility by Wisconsin, that, they couldn't have. The fact that there was no parameters to go by for a buyout to have been created because this happened before the House case was settled, it creates a very messy situation. I don't know if Miami tampered, but if they did, they should be able to.
They want that. So here's the ultimate truth. Let's call it the way that we see it. They 1,000% tampered. I mean, let's just be real. They 1,000% did. And let's talk about this. Joe, what lost them the playoff? What ultimately lost them with a Heisman level defense? And more than defense, it was their secondary. Joe, they went in the portal and grabbed 5 kids from the portal in their secondary. Like, I mean, let's call a spade the way that we see it. What it looks like on the surface, the kid signed the contract. Miami was looking all over the place because they needed DBs. He was a South Florida kid, and they were like, well, hey, man, I mean, I got a connection to Xavier Lucas. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, and they went after him. They're going to have to prove that his dad's ill. That's the only way that I can see them getting out of this, and I don't even know if that's going to be enough.
Right, that's what I'm getting in here. I don't know if that's going to be enough because at the end of the day, one of the quotes in this article from the CBS Sports article, a Big Ten source said, "No one can tell me why a contract shouldn't be enforceable between an adult and an institution. Contracts are enforceable in every other aspect of the commercial regulatory enterprise." So one thing that did kind of stand out to me, it felt like that the Big Ten was aggressively motivated, like very aggressively motivated to support Wisconsin to make sure that they end up winning this.
I mean, he personally didn't come out with a statement, but his office did.
Mm-hmm.
His office said that we stand behind Wisconsin and we will back Wisconsin in this lawsuit. And good on them. I mean, good on them. I mean, I don't think anybody is. The sad thing is, I don't think anybody's on Xavier Lucas' side. And if any of his story is true, they should be. Because at the end of the day, players are human. Like, we take that far out of, oh, well, you got to stay here. No, you don't have to make me do anything. I don't have to come into work. I cannot. Joe, we do this for a living, so we're kind of our own bosses. But if we don't want to do a show, we don't have to do what we don't want to. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that there's not consequences to those actions. So, like, we were
an easy example here, though, is that, like, we have a deal with Bet Online, which I'm pointing to on the top of the overlay. If we didn't meet the requirements and we just didn't do shows for a month, we wouldn't get paid. So, like, that's the very simple comparison. It's not. I hate when people do the whole, well, if a bigger company offered you a job, wouldn't you jump and leave, as comparing? It's not the same thing. If you sign an enforceable contract like a sponsorship deal, you have to meet the terms of that deal for that period of time.
1,000% agree. And listen, if there is a bigger company out there that wants to give me multi-millions of dollars, I'm all for it.
They'd probably have to pay some sort of a buyout. I'm sure they'd be willing to.
Oh, well, nobody's knocking on my door to do that. That's all right. Joe, before we wrap up here, the Pac-12 is alive and well as they got a new TV deal with CBS. Joe, I got to be honest. Why am I want to get back on the Pac-12 bandwagon. Why am I so blah about this new TV deal? Why am I so blah about the Pac-12. I think we're looking at the Pac-12 as the old Pac-12, and it's not remotely close.
We had this conversation when the news came out of the new teams that were going to be joining the Pac-12. Yeah, it's not the same conference. It does not have anywhere near the history of the only two remaining initial teams that are in the conference. Were not even the powerhouses. They were memorable brands, and they produced some good seasons, but they were not even close to the level of success of programs like USC, Oregon, Washington. Even if we went further down, Arizona, UCLA had really historic seasons in the Pac-12. But I'm just glad that they signed a TV deal. That was the big focus for me. Like, is that if you were adding these new teams, getting a TV deal was the foundation for building the conference back up. I really think, and they're never going to return to the same level of competition that they once were, Blake. They're just not going to. The teams that they have in this conference are not by any means fundable enough to compete with the powerhouses in the sport. They're just not. They're not in markets big enough to do so. But I think that they could be the best G5 conference or G6 conference. I think that they could be the best group of 6 conference with the brands that they currently have. They can be better than the American. They can be better than the Sun Belt. It is very accomplishable. And I think that they have the weight to throw around as well as the money from all those teams leaving when they did to do it.
They can certainly be competitive. Right now, I'm not willing to say that they'll be better than the American because the Americans had a lot more consistency, but had consistency. I get where you're coming from, though. Listen, I'm glad that they got a TV deal. I'm glad that fans of those teams will be able to have a TV revenue deal. I'm sure that the schools are really excited for it. I'm glad that, the Pac-12 have enough with CBS that they can do it. But, Joe, this is not – I know that the TV deal is going to even help them pursue other avenues in reference to going and getting other schools and universities. Joe, I don't think that it will matter. I think that there will be some good teams in there. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, just like every G5 program, it's not going to I feel like I'm glad that it's being reported, and we will cover them. We will cover them. The bottom line, though, is that they're going to have to show and rebuild this. I mean, it's not going to be an overnight thing. Like, one TV deal does not build. I mean, Joe, with all due respect, college baseball had more viewers than a Game 6, Game 7 situation. The same thing goes for football. What people like, they tell you. They will show you what they like, and I don't know if that's going to be it. Joe, remember, I'll just briefly say this. Remember when we were talking about Boise State and everybody's like, oh, Ashton Jeanty hadn't played anybody? And we're like, dude, the dude's insanely talented. People weren't watching them, and they were a playoff team.
I think it's a good point, but here's the one thing that I would add, though. CBS does carry a lot more weight than the deal that I don't know if they get relegated to Paramount Plus and CBS Sports Network for the most part. I would hope that they get opportunities to be on primetime CBS. I think that this does present an opportunity for them, because what is something that everybody always talked about and loved about the Pac-12? Pac-12 After Dark is that after all the games are over, at the end of the night, I get to sit and watch another game. There's another game on, and it might not be the most entertaining. It might not be the most compelling. You usually would never miss the most important game of the night, but sometimes you'd catch a little bit of a spark. I don't know if we're going to get that same thing. I don't believe, unless I'm missing something here, CBS has not had CBS, like the actual CBS channel, has not had any conferences that have slotted into the very late night time slot. I hope that they use this window to take advantage of that, because I think people will tap in. I think people will. I think people will gladly.
Sickos definitely will.
I think people will gladly watch a Boise State game. I think people will gladly watch San Diego State square off. Like, I think that it's absolutely there, and it's capitalizable, and it could be the growing point for them. And it's the way that they move on from this. But I do kind of agree with you, though, that this is kind of like a non-factor, and I don't know how much the deal is worth, but it is expected to be significantly more money than any of the other G5 teams are making. something that was referenced in Ross Dellinger's article. For Texas State, if they did move, there would be a dramatic increase in conference revenue, more than doubling the Sun Belt's payout for what they're giving. So there would be a huge boost in revenue for the teams.
They can definitely go. Here's the good thing. They can definitely go and target teams that they specifically want. For sure. For sure, they can go out and target whoever they want. They better be very calculated in who they go get. Yeah. Listen to me. Go get the teams that have been relevant in some of these other conferences. Don't go after the Texas States of the world.
Well, Texas State's a growing program.
If you're going to pay that level of money, why wouldn't you go ask Tulane? Why wouldn't you go?
They're too far. I don't love the thought of
Joe, we have the ACC where Stanford goes and plays Miami.
That's stupid. That's really stupid. That's something that
is very stupid. But with all due respect, it's the world that we live in. The Atlantic Coast Conference has teams on the Pacific Coast.
I don't think it makes it right. I would try to go back and the first thing I would do is try to convince Cal and Stanford to come back, because they're not going to win anything in the ACC. They're not.
Well, first off, let's get there. I 1,000% agree with you, and I
don't know what that takes, but they should do it.
Well, Cal does not have an AD, and so Ron Rivera is over operations when it comes to football, which I guess we could have kind of gotten to, but we were out of, we were on vacation. But yeah, I wouldn't mind bringing back Cal and Stanford. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm just going to throw this your way. I mean, UCLA would never do this, but I would ask.
No, I don't think because they were one of the first teams that left the Pac-12. Well, that's the only one I push back on.
Well, they left because of USC too. I mean, you're not getting Washington, you're not getting Oregon, you're not getting USC. Yeah, maybe you can get Cal and Stanford. And, from a business perspective, it would save them a lot of money.
I don't know what the contract that Cal and Stanford signed.
I can tell you this right now. If you're Cal or Stanford, you don't have an 18-wheeler with pads and helmets and pants and jerseys that you got to drive from California all the way to South Florida for a football game, and you got to leave 4 days in advance. How much money does that save?
That's a good point. I don't know what a buyout would look like, but I don't think it's a big, because if I remember correctly, the deal that they signed,
I don't even think it
wasn't favorable. Yeah.
Well, I don't even think for a couple of years they're getting TV revenue anyway.
I believe that's correct.
So how are you going to pay players TV revenue when you have no TV revenue?
That's a good question. That's a great question.
We'll see. All right. I'm Blake Ruffino. This is Joe DeLeone. It's good to be back, buddy. Football is back. Yes, sir.
No more breaks. No more breaks.
Not from me. I'm getting football ready, even though I got the Yankees and the Reds playing right here in the studio.
I couldn't be more excited.
Me too. It's almost here, buddy. It's almost here. All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a great night, man. Peace.